Good afternoon. Kindly remind the others to join. We will start in 15 minutes. Thank you. Hello. At this point, may I request everyone to turn on your cameras? Again, we are recording for documentation purposes and we will start with a short prayer.
Lord, thank you for this day, for the presence of everyone in this call. For once again, we are gathered and given the opportunity to appreciate life and your words. Forgive us for our shortcomings and cleanse our hearts as we learn and live your words and example. Father, bless our endeavors, especially today's meeting. May you guide us in our discussions, and may you enlighten our minds in every decision that we make. Give us your grace that we may effectively do our parts for your greater glory. All this we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today is November 24, and this is our first online session for week 16 for software engineering 2. Again, for your attendance, kindly type your names and your student ID numbers there in the chat box alphabetically. Our agenda for this meeting is to um, officially open our finals period with the discussion of our lessons. Yes, it's been how many weeks since our last meeting? Upon checking the calendar, we had our last meeting November 4, face to face. Since tama ba? Na late tayo with the midterm examination natin. I mean, we had that day pa lang our midterm exam, and the following day I had to submit your midterm grades. Ako nga pala. For this session, you'll hear um, some good news, no? Sige, isa-isahin natin kasi sabi niyo lagi may bad news eh. So, I'll give you good news. One good news natin is that I was able to submit your midterm grades on time, no? I think hindi na kasi tayo nakapag-meet after the midterm exam day. Yes, I was able to submit it. Guess what time? I was able to submit it at exactly 11:59 p.m. that day, November 5, at least dated November 5, right? Anyway, and yes, for everyone to know their grades, we'll do the grade reveal. Supposedly, we had it last week during the face-to-face week natin, but unfortunately, because of um, the reasons that I'll mention nga later, ay hindi natin nagawa. So, most likely, we can do the grade reveal na lang by next week. Okay? Pero, yun na nga. The following week after November 4, November 10 and 11, we weren't able to meet since due to the inclement weather, classes were suspended. So, ang galing, sakto Monday, Tuesday, so hindi tayo nakapag-meet. The following week, as you all know, we had to prepare for the PSC Regional Pitching Competition, which is dated November 18. So, we weren't able to meet na then ng Monday, November 17. So, still, for week 15, wala rin tayo naging meeting. So, this will be our first meeting actually for finals, right? And as you all know, it's already week 16. And for everyone's information, if we are gonna check the calendar for this semester, to be exact. Why? Kasi for the week 17, that is the schedule of the final examination. And yeah, ibig sabihin lang nun, we will have to conclude everything today. I mean, rather this week kasi nga exam week next week. And then, um, yun nga. For next week, ang schedule ay Monday and Wednesday ang departmentalized exam. So that is for the first year and second year. And then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and probably Saturday if you have Saturday classes will be for your for your exams naman kayong mga third years and fourth year. So yes, in short, week 16 will be the last week to cover everything na kailangan ma-discuss for all our classes. And guess what? We are about to open pa lang, no, with our first lesson discussion. Supposedly, for everyone's information, I think I mentioned this din naman during the orientation. For Eng 2, wala masyadong discussion supposedly, okay? Kasi nga, it's really on how we are gonna fully deploy the projects. But because of a lot of reasons, one reason is that we weren't able to cover really, no? Unfortunately, upon checking with Sir Daniel as your instructor for Eng 1, there were certain topics na hindi na-cover sa inyo last sem, which is why we are trying to make habol of them here, no? Kaya naman, we had this series of discussions. We have to make this series of discussions, which is why for midterm, sabi ko sana natapos natin kung kinaya para at least this finals you will really be doing na lang the projects. No? Pero unfortunately, we still have two lessons for everyone's information. At least now we need to finish these two more lessons, which is, or rather, which will bring me to the next good news that we have. Okay? Na upon checking, parang hindi pala siya applicable sa inyo. The good news ko kasi for you guys, for soft and classes ko, ay um, for this week, I believe we will be able to meet twice, no? Is that a good news? Diba I told you kasi last time na because of the reason that I have to attend the final defense presentations of our graduating students, so I have to make time for them, specifically one day dun sa soft end classes natin, no, we talked ni Ma'am Linda na I can give yung schedule para sa inyo to work on the project development na lang and then for me to sit as their panelist nga. But yes, the good news is that for this week, no one will have their presentations today and tomorrow, except for one. I just realized it earlier before we start the session. Kaya nga, sabi ko good news ba siya? Guess what? One one student will have her presentation pala tomorrow at 1 p.m. So, how can we realize yung good news natin, no? Pero it's scheduled naman ng 1 to 2:30, which brings me to my question to everyone. Do you have a class at um 9:30 to 12? Ah, may class kayo. Is it kay Ma'am Denise? Okay. Okay. I'm not sure if you are meeting Ma'am Denise twice. Ano ba sabi? Ah, okay. Hindi ko kasi alam kung ano, kung it is possible for you to join tomorrow yung B ng morning para ma-advance, para at least di ako nagmamadali. Pero if ever naman na matapos yung kaso I don't want kasi na ganun kasi mabibitin tayo if ever. Because sabi ko nga we still have two lesson discussions. So today and tomorrow sana, no? Today yung isa and then another one tomorrow. Para by next week, for everyone's information, eto na naman. On Monday, it's departmentalized exam, so we won't meet kasi nga I'll be serving as a proctor. All full-time faculty members will be administering the exams kasi ng first year and second year. So for sure, we cannot conduct classes. And then, yun nga, on Tuesday will be your examination. Okay? Which brings me to another good news later, no? Pero dito muna tayo sa ang daming problema, no? Sabi ko good news lang. Pero today, target natin to finish one discussion, and then, oh, here's the thing, no? Schedule na natin, take note. After our discussion today, we are gonna have your quiz number 4 tomorrow. Okay? Isa lang pala yung bad news ko. The bad news ko is that tomorrow we'll do it online since online week tayo, no? So, make sure to prepare for that. Make sure to be camera ready tomorrow, no? So, yun ang gagawin sana natin bukas. And then after that, we will have another discussion. And then, after the discussion ng lesson 5, we'll have another quiz, which is to be scheduled Tuesday next week. Okay? Which brings me to another good news naman. The good news is that on that day, we will do the quiz na ng face-to-face. Okay ba yon? Ayan. Sorry, tomorrow kasi online eh. So, mag-online quiz tayo. So, next week, at least we will do it face-to-face. Yung mga gusto ng face-to-face quiz, let's celebrate. Okay? So, ayun nga. It's just that ang worry ko is how can we do? Kasi kayo lang yun eh. Sa inyo lang. Kasi isa lang naman siya magde-defense bukas. So, I wonder how can we do it kung sa ibang classes magagawa ko siya. Ba yan, nasisira talaga yung sked natin, no? Okay, so, pero yun na nga, how can we do it kaya? Is it possible? What time is your class kay Ma'am Denise? 9:30 to 12 talaga? 10 to 12. What if you'll have your quiz at 9:30 to 10? It's so quick lang naman. Is it possible? Para the rest of our time, tomorrow, discussion tayo. Para hindi tayo nangangar kasi, yun nga, the stressful thing is, yung titirang time natin tomorrow. Kasi if the defense presentation will be done by 2:30, we'll only have 2:30 to 3:30 to discuss. So, hindi na pwedeng mag-quiz pa tayo kasi the discussion is at least an hour to an hour and a half sana nga eh. Pero we'll try to compress it na lang. What do you think? Ayun nga, hindi. It's just that during the time na nag-defense, 1 hour lang sila. Pero there were presentations actually that 2 hours nga nag exceed kami kasi meron namang inaalat na 30 minutes na interval. Pero yeah, depende kasi dun sa, sa naging output. Kayo, i-target nyo na in 10 minutes tapos na, di ba? Anyway, speaking of final defense, we will be discussing the details as well of your final defense presentation for this course. If not tomorrow, dami nating time, no? Probably next week. I'll be posting as well the instructions and the guidelines on what to prepare for your final defense, which I were in one thing that I want everyone to prepare is to um, coordinate now with your panel members the schedule of our final defense. This is the good news natin. Another good news that I have is that your final defense presentations will be scheduled not next week. Okay? Kasi nga exam week pa lang next week. We can have it on week 18 and that is on December 8 and 9. Okay? So, it's just that I have to coordinate yung schedule kasi natin because I heard that you will also have your final defense presentation. I mean, rather your research forum on December 9. So, for sure, we will really have to do it on December 8. So, yun ang sinasabi natin, no? That kasi we are having Ma'am Denise then as one of the panelists natin for your Sofang 2 final defense. So, we'll see if kaya natin siyang ipasok um, ng what do you call this? Ng Monday or we'll probably schedule it on a later update basta on week 18 pa rin. Is that clear? What do you prefer? We have it before your research forum or we'll have it after? Guys, wala kayong thoughts? Parang gusto sabihin wag na. Siyempre hindi pwede. That's the final requirement natin, no, for this course. So, we'll probably have it during Christmas Eve. Gusto nyo ba? Christmas Eve tayo. Guard. Okay. Anyway, sige. Basta we'll make sure that we'll have it on week 18. I heard, we talked kasi nung other faculty members and then some classes will have their final defense next week eh. So, sabi ko hindi ako sasabay. So, at least, mauna na sila. After na lang tayo. So, we'll do it na lang on week 18. Anyway, yung semester naman for the institution really is still week 18. It's just that nauna tayo kasi nasa isang cluster tayo with CBA, I guess. Ayan. The other colleges will have their final exams kasi ng week 18 pa. So, we can probably meet or have the defense na lang on week 18. Okay? Anyway, so, ano pa ba? Is that a good news? I hope that is a good news, no? Pero, gusto ko ng good news naman from you. Bigyan nyo naman ako ng good news. Ano nang ganap sa projects natin? Sige, I just want to see numbers there in the chat box. If you are gonna rate it, or wag rate, percentage na lang pala. Anong percentage na ng natin? Readiness. 2%. Guard. 41.2. Mga 2 eh. Anong percentage na iba? 6.7. Ako, mukhang yan ang mga gusto nyong grade ah. Pwede. 1, haha-react. The-drop ako. Ayan na oh. Okay na? Anyway. So, ayun. So, I hope, sabi ko nga, no, it's just that for those reasons that I mentioned, we weren't able to meet, but as emphasized to everyone, it's a chance na sana we were able to make use of to prepare or to work on the projects, no, and not to work on to do ML or what para lang kasabi niyo, wala lang klase kayo sir, tayo, mag-grind tayo, guard. Yan ang sinasabi ko. Tapos kapag, na, checking na, sabihin nyo, sir, wala kaming time, guard. Tama ba yun? Yung mga to eh. Anyway, so, ayun, ang sinasabi natin, you were given those days, yung mga hindi tayo nakakapag-meet, na sana nagamit nyo siya para you won't have any reason not to be ready anytime. Okay? Pero yun na nga, I'm telling you now na you still have 2 weeks at least, no? 2 weeks to to work on your preps and yeah, another thing pala, yung sinasabi ko na kahit i-coordinate na with your panelists, na we are gonna have, with your project beneficiaries that you are gonna invite them as panelists within that week 18. Okay? Sige. Pahinga na. Sige. Rest easy. Alinson. Rest easy. Okay. Anyway, so may questions ba or concerns? Isa lang? Yeah, isa lang. Kasi we will also have a faculty member probably and the research coordinator as a panelist. Don't worry, again, I'm gonna post the um, presentation guideline soon. Okay? Nauna na yung mga BSIT 3 last week. I'm not sure if you have friends sa BSIT 3, pero they had their final defense na last week with Ma'am Army for their integrity system integration and administration course. Ayan. So, tayo ito kasi yung counterpart nun. Yes, counterpart sa IT. Yung SIA. Okay? Ayun, 'di ba? Sumakses na sila. Oh, anyway, ayun, any questions or concerns? Wala? Okay na tayo? So, ulitin ko for this week. Ay, ano nang pala plano natin tomorrow? Is it possible to have it for you to take the quiz tomorrow at 9:30 a.m.? No? Because anong reason? Ha? So how are we gonna Anyway, tomorrow, if not, kasi kung hindi natin mag-move siya na morning, how can we? Unless I'm gonna administer the quiz. Pwede, no? Na naka-laptop habang nagpa-panel. Pwede. Sige, gano'n na lang pala tomorrow. Pwede rin pala. Sige. Tas i-project ko dun sa isang TV ni Ma'am Linda habang nagpe-present para nakikita niya rin sino nangungopia. Sige, gano'n na lang pala. Puwede pala. Sige, gano'n na lang tomorrow, you can probably have your quiz during the schedule na lang pala natin para just make sure that, you all will be camera ready, okay? During the scad natin. And then, I hope you can wait for me after your quiz. Wait for me and then we're gonna proceed to the discussion naman natin. Okay? Ano daw? Give me a second, please. Sir, di po namin masyado magets yung gagawin sa papers. Pwede po pa-help? As I have mentioned to you guys, we can do consultations naman, right? Yun nga ang concern ko, eh. Um, no one, ever tried to, communicate with me. And I checked, sabi ko rin sa inyo, you can also, um, ask for the assistance ni Ma'am Denise. I told her din naman, I asked her if ever if she can help you if ever may questions kayo. Manuscript po ba, sir? Uh, in a way, yeah. It's not ACM kasi yung ACM, that's what you had last time, 'di ba? As I have, nga, we are expecting that this will serve as your application. I mean, as the application of what you have learned from Ma'am Denise. But as I have emphasized to everyone, you don't really have to um, really, because we won't be that technical. We won't really gonna um, be so technical with regards to the checking of your papers. It's just that I am expecting that you are gonna uh, have a draft um, form pa lang naman of the paper because again it'll really require time for us to polish the paper. It's just that again, what I want to you to do within your group is to work with the papers of the projects natin kasi that is actually one of the deliverables ever since, no? Um, in terms of software development for all of the courses actually, which leads to thesis writing. User manual, it's not user manual. The user manual, kasi yung sinasabi nyo, user manual is just a guide on how to use, di ba? Am I right? That's what we refer as user manual. Parang user guide on how they are gonna use the application. Am I right? Or not? Yun ba yun? Or ano ba yung, what do you mean by user manual? Kasi when you say user manual, that's it. Okay? It's not user manual. Again, it's the technical documentation. That's how we can refer it of your um of your paper. But again, um, it's of course I understand that there were certain parts in which um we won't be able to really write because of lack of data. And so we are really expecting that your paper will just be a draft form of what your paper should be for the projects natin. Is that clear? So what I am just expecting is really a, an application of what you have learned from research methods. What do you mean, Ma'am Lizelle? Ano ba subject ni Ma'am Lizelle sa inyo? Ma'am Denise, Ma'am Lizelle, ano ba siya? 'Di ba ano siya, Ag and Complexity or Automata? Anyway, ayun so, um, ayun. So again, application lang siya of, what you've learned. Kaya nga, sabi ko nga it's supposedly kasi nai-link natin siya pero kasi iba yung naging instruction sa inyo for research methods which is why we'll understand that you really don't have, um, I mean, you won't be able to, uh, really polish the paper. Okay, so again, we won't be so technical with regards to that. Is that clear? I hope that makes sense. Reactions. Anong bilis ngayon? What do you mean by bilis ngayon? Sa attendance. Diyos ko, third year na kayo. Hanggang ngayon, hindi pa rin ba tayo sanay sa ganyang attendance? Anyway, ano na? Concerns? Wala na? Okay na tayo. Yes, yes, yes. JC. Invento ako ng ng nickname. Okay na, guys? So, yeah. May tanong ka, Adrian. Naka-raise hand ka pala.
Ay, yung kanina yun, sir, na naiwan ko lang po nakataas.
Okay, baka mangawit ka. So, ayun, may other questions pa ba? Because if wala, I think later na ulit yung ibang good news na yes, Adrian.
Yun pala, sir, mag-PPM po pala ako, sir, if ever po. Regarding po sa klase bukas.
Okay, sige. So, talaga yung kahit nasa sir, may PM po ako. Card. Okay, sige. Ayan, so may other concerns pa? Kasi if wala, I think we can now proceed to our discussion. Sige. Give me a sec. So this will fall again for the lecture natin. I'm thinking if I'm gonna tell you muna the good news or sige, bukas na nga lang yung good news. na isa. Pinaka-good news. Pinaka-good in English, the best news. You'll know. Wait lang. Ano daw? My God. Tagal nating hindi nag-meet. Eto pa rin ako. Anytime, tatago sa pader. Who knows? Malay nyo, di ba? Hindi matuloy defense nyo. Hard. Anyway, sige, let's start na. Hindi ko ako maka-share talaga dito sa desktop. I'll try to join na lang with my other device. Give me a sec lang. So sorry. My God. Okay, ayan. Well, I'm setting it up. Yeah, for today's discussion, this will be chapter 4 natin, no? We will, let's do a recap lang. For midterm, we had 3 chapters in which for the first chapter, that's a brief overview of what software engineering is, and I hope everything is clear. Through that discussion, we were able to lay down um, all the main um, concepts that we will actually be covering for this semester, which led us to software processes as the chapter 2, in which in that discussion we were able to realize, diba, the key activities involved in software engineering, which involves 4, diba? What are the 4 key activities or fundamental activities that are somehow common to the software processes? We have first, of course, the software specification, in which um, we are trying um, to know or to identify what software is to be developed through the requirements, right? So we are gonna gather the requirements, and then from there we will be um, identifying the constraints on the solutions operations somehow, diba? And then from this, we have the second, which is software development, where the software will be designed and programmed, leading to validation, where the software is checked to ensure that it is really doing what the customer requires. And lastly, software evolution, where the software is being modified to reflect the changing customer and market requirements. So from there, nagkaroon na tayo kaagad ng ano no, ng um, overview of what um, or how rather what completes this the software development. So in detail, we are gonna um, discuss them. Particularly in chapter 3, we discussed um, requirement specification, in which there nakita naman natin the different techniques and methods on how we gather these requirements, right? Which now leads us to chapter 4, which this time we are gonna jump to um, the second, which is design and implementation. So yes, no, this in software engineering, uh this basically is probably one of the ano the most tiring part, right? Kasi obviously this will mark now the transition from the concept that we built, diba? We thought of doing to reality. So this phase will reinforce the idea that understanding system requirements and designing solutions thoughtfully allows for smoother implementation. In startup companies now, or even mga outsourcing companies, design decisions influence not only how systems are being built, but also how future proof, scalable, and maintainable they become. So, for this particular discussion, our objectives are to introduce object oriented software design using the UML. We all are familiar already, I believe, with UML, the standardized visual language used to specify, visualize, construct, and document the artifacts of a software system. UML, which stands for, I don't want to ask na kasi wala naman kayo index cards, no? So, Unified Modeling Language, right? So, from there, we will highlight the important implementation concerns. So, in this discussion, the following will be the topics that we'll discuss. We'll try to understand the most important activities in a general object-oriented design process. Some of the different models that may be used to document an object-oriented design. Know about the idea of design patterns and how these are a way of reusing design knowledge and experience, and to know the key issues that have to be considered when implementing software, which includes software reuse and open source development. So, software design and implementation is now the stage at which an executable software system has to be developed. Kaya nga sabi natin, it is somehow one of the tiring task, kasi nga this is now where we are gonna realize the concepts that we formed from specification. For some simple systems, software engineering means software design and implementation and all other software engineering activities are merged with this process. However, for those large systems, software design and implementation is only one of a number of software engineering process, 'di ba? Software design and implementation activities are invariably interleaved. A software design is a creative activity in which we identify software components and their relationships based on a customer's requirements, while implementation is when we realize the design as a program. Sometimes there is a separate design stage, and this design is modeled and documented. While other times, a design is in the programmer's head or roughly sketched on a whiteboard or sheets of paper. Design is about how to solve a problem, so there is always a design process. However, it isn't always necessary or appropriate to describe the design in detail using the UML or other design description language. So basically, um, if we are gonna think of them separately, design defines the system structure while implementation brings it to life through programming. Is that clear? Tama? So, kumbaga, we are gonna draft it, we draw it, and then we, um, kumbaga sa drawing, you sketch it, and then you put colors later. It's like that. Is that clear? I hope that makes sense. Okay. So, yeah, build or buy. So somehow, for some, ano kasi, for some organizations, they opt to, to purchase, 'di ba? Their own systems. Like, let's say for an LMS, um, for schools, if they can, if they have the means, 'di ba, to um, purchase their learning management system, obviously they are gonna buy it instead of exerting efforts to design pa, 'di ba? I While us, 'di ba, given that aside from the fact na we don't have we don't really have the means as a local college, obviously, um, we cannot, I mean, we don't have that much to that much resources to buy. Pero we have the resources to develop our own, which is why we have now GC Lamp, right? I just remember, I want to share to everyone. One thing that we experience, kasi di ba we regularly attend sa mga um, conferences and assemblies of um, IT organizations and institutions. Um, just last time when we attended the PSITE General Assembly. Kasi of course in those events merong mga um, tech companies and mga businesses who who are being invited to sell their products ganyan or to promote their services. Of course, we expect na kasi they know that we are educators. The one thing na laging binibenta ay learning management system. I remember one thing that happened to us kasi magkakasama kami in one table. Meron pumunta sa amin, tapos nakitable. Tapos, of course, they are eager to, habang we are eating, they are eager to sell to us. Siyempre, narinig nila Gordon College. Actually, sad thing there is that they are not familiar with Gordon College that much. No, they thought we are a private institution. So for the for the invite siya na bilhin daw yung ay na ganito daw bilhin daw natin ganyan. And then obviously we have to tell them that we believe we don't need, given that we have our GC lamp, right? Then we told them na it's something that we have developed in-house, developed LMS ang ginagamit na. And then guess what they told us? What he told us. Sabi niya, that's so impossible. Wala pa daw sa Philippines ang nakakagawa ng sarili nilang LMS. Hindi ko alam kung ano yung mga RRLs niya. Card, joke lang. Hindi, ano yung, kasi ganun, no? Hindi ko alam kung baka outdated na yung references niya kasi wala pa daw, sabi niya, baka according sa research niya. Pero yun na nga, hindi daw siya naniniwala na meron daw tayong LMS and all. Kasi nga, obviously, parang they believe, syempre they have developed their products and then they know that it's something that requires time and effort. But yun nga, we told them that it is the product of um, our goal before to help the community, of course. Given that we are in the middle of the pandemic that time, diba? As we all know the background why we have now our own learning management system. So, ayun. And then, in short, na-surprise siya na yung kausap niya, ano, ay won't need their products kasi we already have our own. Ganon. So, but of course, it's something that hindi naman nakaka-off kasi nga, no, it's just that at least we have something to, ano, no, to um, somehow be proud of, 'di ba? Na in a way, kasi we can probably think of, ano, no, selling the same solution, 'di ba? Kasi it's something that we have developed, the product of the institution. Pero obviously, we in partnership actually with, 'di ba, with Chedro 3 and DOST Region 3, we have redesigned the same learning management system producing what we call the R3 lamp, which I already shared to everyone, which is something that can be used by HEIs in the region, 'di ba? So anyway, that's just a story na it's probably something na um, result of um, the market being ano no not really um, looking at the bigger picture. Did you get the point? As um, you being future software engineers, no, or developers, that's one thing that we probably have uh, to do or think of, that we really have to widen um, our views, kumbaga, 'di ba? Kasi baka yun nga, kaya last week when we attended the PSC, somehow, 'di ba? I hope, sabi ko kaya ang worry ko sila mga kasama ko ay kung kung na-inspire ba sila really dun sa mga ibang ideas or nagtsikahan lang kami, no? Or what. Pero ayun na nga, kasi obviously we heard a lot of ideas and some of those are for them, even for us, or something that is new and that can be used or that can be sold to the market. Pero ayun, given na we are now living in the modern time, no, modern world, and more and more developers are booming. At syempre, kasabay din naman ng pagdami natin, no, sa pagdami ng mga innovators, hindi rin naman nauubos ang mga problema talaga, right? Lalo na we live in a problematic country. Do you agree? Parang hindi nauubos yung problem, no? Kahit saang aspeto mo tignan, kahit in environmental environmental concerns na lang, 'di ba? Right? So, May cooking show, saan? Pati pati yun problema na rin 'no, dinadagdag sa problema sa isipin natin kung paano nanalo si ano, si Mexico. Guard. So, anyway, give me a second please. So, ang daming problema, 'di ba? So, we really have to ano, um, to have that in mind, okay? That as we think of solutions or as we probably if we are gonna be successful in the future in this field, that's one thing that we probably ano, no, should do. Okay, do not box yourself, think outside the box. Okay, ano, malaki yung ano nun, yung ibig sabihin nun. It's not yung alam lang natin na ano, really it really involves everything. Like, 'di ba? The fact na that someone told us, claimed na wala siya sa paniniwala niya, 'di ba? Walang makakagawa pero guess what? No, without considering that someone, even young minds can probably think of doing it and realize it, 'di ba? Ayun. So that's the lesson. But anyway, going back to our discussion, some may opt to buy, but some may opt to build their own. In a wide range of domains, um, it is now possible to buy off the shelf systems that can be adapted and tailored to the user's requirements. When you develop an application in this way, the design process becomes concerned with how to use the configuration features of that system to deliver the system requirements. Okay. So later we are gonna see how it is being realized through one thing that we mentioned before, if you can recall. As developers, one technique is what we call the software reuse. Okay. Sige. We'll jump to that later. This time, let us try to look at object-oriented design using the UML. An object-oriented system is made up of interacting objects that maintain their own local state and provide operations on that state. This representation is private and cannot be accessed directly from outside the object. So, object oriented design processes involve designing object classes and the relationships between these classes. So, to develop a system design from concept to detailed object oriented design, we need to do the following activities. First, to define or understand the context and the external interactions with the system, design the system architecture. And then after that, we identify the principal objects in the system, develop design models, and lastly, specify object interfaces. Like all creative activities, design is not a clear-cut sequential process. We develop a design by getting ideas, propose solutions, and refine these solutions as information becomes available. We inevitably have to backtrack and retry when problems arise. Sometimes we explore options in detail to see if they work. At other times, we ignore details until late in the process. Sometimes we use notations such as the UML nga, precisely to clarify aspects of the design. At other times, not or rather, use informally to stimulate discussions. Okay, so understanding the relationship between the software that is being designed and the external environment is really essential um, for deciding how to provide the required system functionality and how to structure the system to communicate with its environment. this is really essential, no? Somehow, in a way, on how um, we can see, di ba, what the system should do. So, setting the system boundaries helps you decide what features are implemented in the system being designed and what features are in other associated systems. So, ano, no, um, in a way, we do as well comparative analysis with regards to other systems. In this case, we need to decide how functionality is distributed between the control system for all the weather stations and the embedded software in the weather station itself. So that's with the example natin later. So system context models and interaction models present complementary views of the relationships between a system and its environment. This includes that a system context model is a structural model that demonstrates the other systems in the environment of the system being developed. And lastly, an interaction model, which is a dynamic model that shows how the system interacts with its environment as it is um, used. Okay, sorry. So basically, this expands no on static and dynamic models, which allows developers to visualize how objects collaborate during program execution, right? So here we see um, that the system in the environment of each weather station are a weather information system, an onboard satellite system, and a control system. The cardinality information on the link shows that there is a single control systems, but several weather stations, one satellite, and one general weather information system. So here naman, I think you are already familiar naman na din with this one, the use case model for that weather station example natin, in which the weather station interacts with the weather information system to report weather data and the status of the weather station hardware, while the other interactions are with a control um, system that can issue specific weather station control commands such as again, restart, shutdown, reconfigure, power save, and remote control. So, um, as we all know, the stick figure is used to represent other systems as well as human users. Each of these use cases should be described in structured natural language. This would help designers identify objects in the system and gives them an understanding of what the system is intended to do. So here is the example natin for that weather station scenario. Next time we jump to architectural design. Once the interaction between the software system and the system's environment have been defined, we then use this information as a basis for designing the system architecture. Of course, we need to combine this knowledge with our general knowledge of these principles of architectural design and with more detailed domain language. So basically, one external interactions once the in external interactions are understood, architectural design begins. So here again, we define the components, their organization, and interaction. Sometimes um, in, with the use of architectural styles like layered microservices or client server, right? So this demonstrates the composition and communication within the weather station. Components operate independently but share a common infrastructure. So, ayan. Sorry. Next, we jump to object class identification. This time, sorry, my God. In this stage, you should have some ideas about the essential object in the system that we are designing. As your understanding of this, um, we refine these ideas about the system objects. The use case description helps us to identify objects and operations in the system. So, basically, this process is considered iterative and requires domain expertise, right? What are the approaches to identification? We can make use of a grammatical analysis of a natural language description of the system to be constructed. Objects and attributes are nouns, operations or services are verbs. Second, we can use tangible entities in the application domain, such as aircraft, roles, such as managers, events, such as requests, interactions, such as meetings, locations, such as offices, organizational units, such as companies, and so on. And lastly, you can use a scenario based analysis where various scenarios of system use are identified and analyzed in turn. As each scenario is analyzed, the team responsible for the analysis must identify the required objects, attributes, and operations. But in practice, we have to use several knowledge sources to discover object classes. And so here is the object classes for the weather station example natin. Let's not, ano na. This time we look at design models. Design or system models show the objects or object classes in a system. They also show the associations and relationships between these entities. These models are the bridge between the system requirements and the implementation of a system. They have to be abstract so that unnecessary detail doesn't hide the relationships between them and the system requirements. However, they also have to include enough detail for programmers to make implementation decisions. Okay, so basically, design models include both structural and dynamic. Structural, yun yung class diagrams, and then for dynamic, these are the state diagrams. Okay, complex systems like yung mga systems of um, government agencies depend on both models actually to explain how data flows during application, database verification, payment processing, and even biometric capture. There are, yeah, yun yung two kinds, structural and dynamic models. So here are some examples of design uh, models. Structural models, which are um, subsystem models, which show logical groupings of objects into coherent subsystems. These are represented using a form of class diagram with each subsystem shown as a package with enclosed objects. Sequence models, uh, which show the sequence of object interactions. These are represented using UML sequence or a collaboration diagram, and state machine models, which show how objects change their state in response to events. These are represented in the UML using state diagrams. State machines models are considered dynamic models. Okay, so yeah. Next, interface specification. Interfaces define how components communicate without exposing implementation. Okay, so that's an important part of any design process. We need to specify interfaces so that objects and subsystems can be designed in parallel. As once an interface has been specified, the developers of other objects may assume that interface will be implemented. So example again for the weather station. This time we jump to design patterns. Design patterns were derived from the ideas put forward by Christopher Alexander, who suggested that there were certain common patterns of building design and that were inherently pleasing and effective. The pattern is a description of a problem and the essence of its solution so that the solution may be reused in different settings. The pattern is not a detailed specification, but rather can think of it as a description of accumulated wisdom and experience, a well tried solution to a common problem. So, somehow, design patterns solve common design problems efficiently. So, pattern languages are ways to describe best practices, good designs, and capture experience in a way that it is possible for others to reuse this experience. Patterns have made a huge impact on object oriented software design as well as being tested solutions to common problems. They have become a vocabulary for talking about a design. Okay, so the Gang of Four defined the four essential elements of design patterns in their Book of Patterns, which includes a name that is a meaningful reference to the pattern, a description of the problem area that explains when the pattern may be applied, a solution description of the parts of the design solution, the relationships and the responsibilities, and lastly, a statement of the consequences, which are the results and trade-offs of applying the pattern. This can help designers understand whether or not a pattern can be used in a particular situation. Yan. So that's the example natin, particularly for uh, the name. Let's say observer description separates the display. Sige, akin na yan. So, example. And so this time uh, this shows two different graphical represent or presentations of the same data set. Graphical representations are normally used to illustrate the object classes in patterns and their relationships. This supplement the pattern description and add detail to the solution description. Okay, so basically, um, here we see that the observer would notify the dependent objects, right? And so next, design problems and um, yan. That one thing that that we are probably gonna encounter when we use patterns is that we need to recognize that any design problem we are facing may have an associated pattern that can be applied. So that brings us now to this four. We have to tell several objects that the state of some other objects has changed. Tidy up the interfaces to a number of related objects that have often been developed incrementally. Provide a standard way of accessing the elements in the collection, irrespective of how that collection is implemented. And lastly, allowing for the possibility of extending the functionality of an existing class at runtime. Patterns support high-level concept reuse. When you try to reuse executable components, you are inevitably constrained by detailed design decisions that have been made by the implementers of these components. Now we jump to implementation issues. Software engineering includes all of the activities involved in software development, from initial requirements through to maintenance and management of the deployed system. So, um, some aspects of implementation that are particularly important to software engineering, um, in which includes first the reuse, as most modern software is constructed by reusing existing components or systems. When we are developing software, we should make use or make as much use as possible of existing code. Diba? One thing that we emphasized in the previous discussions natin. If we can probably make use of those existing instead of starting from scratch. Next is configuration management. During the development process, many different versions of each software components are created. If you don't keep track of these versions in a configuration management system, we are liable to include the wrong versions of these components in our system. Lastly, host target development. Production software does not usually execute on the same computer as the software development environment, but rather we develop it on one computer and execute it on a separate computer. So the host and the target systems are sometimes of the same type, but often they are completely different. From the 1960s to the 1990s, most new software was developed from scratch, but writing all code in a high level programming language. The only significant reuse or software was the reuse of functions and objects in programming language. Um, but as we all know, um, today, no, um, costs and schedule pressure meant that this approach became increasingly unviable, especially for commercial and internet-based systems, which is why software reuse is now possible at a number of different levels. First is the abstraction level, in which we don't reuse software directly, but rather we use knowledge of successful abstractions in the design of the software. The design patterns and architectural patterns are ways of representing abstract knowledge for reuse. Another level is the object level. At this level, we directly reuse objects from a library rather than writing the code yourself. Um, to implement this type, you have to find appropriate libraries and discover if the objects and methods offer the functions ability that you need. Next is the component level. Components are collections of objects and others, um, and, ob- and object classes rather, that operate together to provide related functions and services. We often have to adopt and extend the component by adding some code of your own. And lastly, um, system model. This time, at this level, we reuse the entire application system. So um, this function usually involves some kind of configuration of the systems, which may be done by adding and modifying code or by using the system's own configuration interface. Okay, and so those are the four: abstraction, object, component, and system levels. Okay, so yeah, for sure, as we expect, just like in the in the existing portals that we have, no? Only customizing um, the specific system portal that we have for program specific features instead of we build it from scratch. Okay. Next, um, yan. Reuse costs. Another important no? There are costs associated with reuse. This includes the costs of the time being spent um, in looking for software to reuse and assessing whether or not um, it meets your needs. You may have to test the software to make um, sure that it will work in your environment, especially if this is different from its development environment. Where applicable, the cost of buying the reusable software for large off-the-shelf systems, this cost can be very high. The costs of adaptive and configuring the reuse software components or systems to reflect the requirements of the system that you are developing. And lastly, the cost of integrating reusable software elements with each other. So, uh, if you are using software from different sources and with the new code that you have developed, integrating reusable software from different providers can be difficult and expensive because the providers make conflicting assumptions about how their respective software will be reused. So, in software development, change happens all the time. So, change management is absolutely essential. When several people are involved in the development, you have to make sure that each won't interfere with each other's work. That is, if two people are working on a component, their changes have to be coordinated. Otherwise, obviously, one programmer may make changes and add overwrite the others' work. We may we also have to ensure that everyone can access the most up-to-date versions of software components. Otherwise, developers may redo work that has already been done. I'm not sure if you have experienced this before. Nagkamali kayo ng no? Give me a second, please. And so, CAD. Configuration management is the name given to the general process of managing a changing software system. The aim of this is to support system integration process so that all developers can have access to the project code and documents in a controlled way, find out what changes have been made, and compile and link components to create a system. Which is why we have to take note of these four fundamental management activities. Number one, version management, where support is provided to keep track of the different versions of software components. Um, Version management systems include facilities to coordinate development by several programmers. They stop one developer from overwriting code that has been submitted to the system by someone else. Next is the system integration, where support is provided to help developers define what versions of components are used to create each version of a system. This description is then used to build the system automatically by compiling and linking the required components. Third, problem tracking, where support is provided to allow users to report bugs and other problems, and to allow all developers to see who is working on these problems and when they are fixed. Another one, which is not included in the slide, is release management, where new versions of a software system are released to customers. Release management is concerned with planning the functionality of new release and organizing the software for distribution. Okay, so basically, here we um, do the tracking, no, of changes, versions, and troubleshooting. Okay, next is host target development. Most professional software development is now based on a host target model, the one that I mentioned earlier. Software is developed on one computer, which serves as the host, and but runs on a separate machine, which is the target. More generally, we can talk about a development platform and an execution platform. So a platform is more than just hardware. It includes the installed operating systems plus other supporting software such as database management systems, or for development platforms, an interactive development environment. And so a software development platform should provide a range of tools to support software engineering processes. This includes an integrated compiler, a language debugging system, graphical editing tools, testing tools, or tools to support refactoring and program visualization, and configuration management tools to manage source code, versions, and to integrate and build systems. Uh, as part of the development process, we need to make decisions about how the developed software will be deployed on the target platform. This straightforward for embedded systems where the target is usually a single computer. However, for distributed systems, um, we need to decide on the specific platforms where the components will be developed. So the issues that we have to consider in making these decisions are that the hardware and software requirements of um, a component, the availability requirements of the system, and the components communication. We jump to open source development. This is an approach to software development in which the source code of the software system is published and volunteers are invited to participate in the development process. So its roots are in the Free Software Foundation, which advocates the source code, or that source code should not be proprietary but rather should always be available for users to examine and modify as they wish. There was an assumption that the code would be controlled and developed by a small core group rather than users of the code. So this extend this idea by using the internet to recruit a much larger population of volunteer developers. So the concept basically promotes collaboration, 'di ba? In which um, multiple peoples, 'di ba, will probably work, no? A group of developers may work and control changes to a certain software. This one is usually cheap or even free to acquire, as we normally download open source software now, today, 'di ba? However, if you want documentation and support, then you may have to pay for this, but costs are usually fairly low. Okay, so for a company involved in in software development, there are two open source issues um, that to that have to be considered. It should be product should the product that is being developed make use of open source components? Second, should an open source approach be used for its own software development? To answer this, it depends on the type of software that is being developed and the background and experience of the development team. So if you are developing a software product for sale, then time to market and reduced costs are critical. If you are developing naman software in a domain in which there are high quality open source system available, we can save time and money by using these systems. However, if we are developing software to a specific set of organizational requirements, then using open source components may not be an option, as we may have to integrate our software with existing systems that are incompatible with available open source systems. Even then, however, it could be quicker and cheaper to modify the open source system rather than redeveloping the functionality that we need. Okay? So, many software product companies are now using open source approach to development, especially for specialized systems. Some companies believe that adopting an open source approach will reveal confidential business knowledge to their competitors and so are reluctant to adopt the development model. However, if we are working in a small company and we open source our software, this may reassure customers that they will be available or that will be able rather to support the software if our company goes out of business. So, yeah, a fundamental principle of open source development is that source code should be freely available. This does not mean that anyone can do as they wish with that code. So, obviously, there are legal considerations uh, when um, doing open source development. So, one of which is, of course, that developers of the code um, owns the code, legally speaking. No, they can place restrictions on how it is used by including legally binding conditions in an open source software license. Um, Most often, open source licenses are variants of one of these general models. The GPL or General Public License. This is a so-called reciprocal license that simplistically means that if you use open source software that is licensed under GPL license, then you must make the software open source. Next, GNU Lesser General Public License or LGPL. Um, this is a variant naman of the GPL license where we can write components that link to open source code without having to publish the source of these components. However, if we change the license components, then we must again publish this as open source. Third is the BSD license or Berkeley Standard Distribution. This is a non-reciprocal this time license, which means that you are not obliged to republish any changes or modifications made to open source code. You can include the code in proprietary systems that are sold. So if you use open source components, we must acknowledge the original creator of the code. Okay? So companies managing projects that use open source should establish a system for maintaining information about open source components that are downloaded and used. So we have to keep a copy of the license for each component that was valid at the time the component was used. Licenses may change, so we need to know the conditions that we have agreed to. Second, we have to be aware of the different types of licenses and understand how a component is licensed before it is used. So we may decide to use a component in one system but not in another because we plan to use these systems in different ways. Third, be aware of evolution pathways for components. You need to know a bit about the open source project where components are developed to understand how they might change in future. Educate people about open source. It's not enough to have procedures in place to ensure compliance with license conditions. You also have to educate developers about open source and open source licensing. Have auditing systems in place as developers under tight deadlines might be tempted to break the terms of a license. So if possible, we should have software in place to detect and stop this. Isa pang ano, no? And lastly, we have to participate in the open source community. Especially if we rely on open source products, we should participate in the community that help support their development. Okay? So the open source approach is one of the several business models for software. In this, companies release the source of the software and sell add-on services and advice in association with this. In summary, we have discussed today the following. Um, First is that software design and implementation are interleaved activities. The level of detail in the design depends on the type of system that is being developed and whether we are using a plan-driven or agile approach. So, just to conclude, in short, software design and implementation as the backbone of software engineering is somehow so important, which is why, as developers, it is on how we are gonna adapt to the technological environments. It's how we can um, probably no strategize in the development natin. Okay, so yeah, guess what? That concludes this discussion natin on um, the design and implementation. So basically, from there, we realize that it's not it doesn't involve only no the coding process natin, but rather it is on how we can really design the solutions or the software strategically through reusing, integrating patterns, even managing changes by adapting to the environment. So, yeah, do you have any questions, everyone? Because if none, guess what? That would actually conclude this discussion. May I just request everyone to turn on your cameras? Yeah, as I have mentioned, tomorrow you'll be taking your quiz, so make sure to be camera ready tomorrow, no? Because while you're taking the quiz, you'll have to keep your cameras on. I already uploaded the material in our classroom. You may check it. Lecture classroom, nakita nyo na. You can use it as a reviewer before the before our quiz tomorrow, not during the quiz. Card. Okay. Sige. So, ano pa ba? Ayun. The good news natin pala is that since tomorrow we'll have another lesson, the thing is we'll assess you na lang with that then, with the quiz natin by Tuesday next week. But then, for everyone's information, we won't have our written examination now for this course, no? So it is just the final defense presentations natin that will serve as your major requirement. Okay? So make sure to be ready. So yun na lang yung magiging activity natin on Tuesday next week. Your quiz, number 5. Okay? Tomorrow yung 4. Sige, nasaan yung iba? Kaya ba mag-on? And then progress checking tayo next week ha. So para I would know kung meron tayo ipe-present ng ng defense week. Kasi kung wala, wag na tayo magsayang ng effort. INC na, gusto niyo ba? I remember, naalala ko lang habang naghihintay tayo ng iba mag-on ng camera. Ang daming mga naghahabol na mga na SOF-Eng 2 compliance kay Sir Arnie. Kasi hanggang December lang sila. Gusto niyo bang pwede na para ma-experience niyo din. Mga na-INC sila. Alam kong narinig niyo lang, sila INC sa SOF-Eng 2. Kaya naman naghahabol sila ngayon ng compliance. Sige, meron pang hahabol? Okey na 'yan, sagad na? Sige, at the count of 3, sorry, smile at the camera. 1, 2, 3, smile. Wait lang, sorry. Pala, isa pa. Ayan, 1, 2, 3, smile. There you go. So, I guess everything is clear naman and yeah. Anyway, tomorrow we'll have another discussion. If you don't have any other concerns and you're done with your attendance, that would be all. Thank you and God bless you all. Stay safe, everyone. Bye bye.